So I've come to the part where there's the shift fork, and I'm in a little bit of a doubt if it goes in this way. And notice the extrusion here, or if it goes in that way. The way I could tell the difference is by, if you notice over here, we've got the mark, a clear circle around that hole there. There. See a clear circle. And that is from small ridge on the shaft, so it has to go in this way. So what it looks like on the truck, remember this is the transmission side, this is the rear. It'll go in like that. But just to make 100% be absolutely sure, once I have this other piece in, I'll actually install that part in the truck and check the movement. So right now, that shift fork gear flat in, and then when this piston gets pushed in, this shaft gets pushed in, it has to clear all the way out of that gear so that the PDL is disengaged. And as you can see, it does just that, even though we have that extra ridge touching on that side. So know that this is installed correctly. So once again, the ridge side of the shift fork faces the front of the truck, and the flat part goes to the back. I think that's also shown on the manual, or at least in the parts manual, I'm pretty sure. But the interesting thing that I was noticing about this system is that this right here, with the ring gear completely disengaged, is normal driving with PDL off. This gear has to move this way to engage both of these, and then that's our PDL on or PDL locked in. But what's getting me is that the way the PDL is positioned, the spring on the shaft here is positioned. It's positioned in a way that it's normally sticking out, and then air pressure has to be applied to push it in that way. Now it's pushed in. So our normal position, or our standard position on the spring and the shaft, is PDL on, which is pretty awkward. Which means that the shift piston is of a push type. It's still a push type, so when you engage your air, it pushes that piston in, and that turns the PDL off. So air has to be applied in order for the PDL to be off. And I think that's kind of a safety mechanism, so that if you lose air to the system, PDL gets turned on. But that's also a very bad system. That's also a problem, and I think that's what might have actually caused my problem, is that let's say you're driving and for some reason you lose air pressure, then the first thing that happens is, while the truck is driving really fast, you lose air to that piston, the spring pushes that shaft out again, and it turns the PDL on while you're driving at a very high speed, and that could be very bad. So if you're driving under normal conditions, these are moving together, and then so that shouldn't be a problem if the PDL engages or disengages, unless you're on a curve. That would be a problem. Or if you're in a situation where you're stuck and then the PDL just engages by itself while these are turning at different speeds, it'll completely damage those gears. So that's kind of a bad system, I would say, because you lose air pressure, and that's the weak point of this truck. It's the air pressure. You lose air pressure, bad things happen. The transmission shifts out of gear, the PDL shifts out of gear. So that's kind of catastrophic. And I wonder if that's what happened. I'm kind of pretty sure that that's what happened to me. Now, the other thing is when the truck is off, PDL is on. So when when the air is off. So let's say there's no air in the truck, then the PDL is engaged. As air builds up, it works against the force of the spring, pushes that shaft in, and it pushes the PDL to the normal off position. So I hope that little explanation helps. But I definitely wish the system was a little bit different. So another big problem of having the PDL normally on, if the truck has no air pressure, is that, let's say there's a leak over here or on the hose, you could be driving with the PDL on and not even knowing it. So, and this thing is very shitty. As you can see, it's just a piece of flimsy sheet steel. It's not very high quality at all. Maybe I could remake that, but that's the problem with the system. So definitely what I'm going to do later is I'm going to replace this elbow with the T and then connect that to a gauge, an air pressure gauge on the dash. So that way I know for sure if the PDL is on or off, and if air is actually getting to it. To be honest with you, I don't really know why these trucks didn't have that. It really should be an essential item on the list. So as you can see from my explanation, there's the spring installed and it's pushing the shaft outwards, which means that it's holding the shift gear and right into the PDL engagement. So it's pushing it towards on. So air pressure has to overcome the force of the spring and push it outwards so that it's off. And the other thing is, depending on how much air pressure you're getting here, if for whatever reason the air pressure is low, it could be stuck somewhere in between where it's on and off and on kind of thing. And then the gears it's jumping in and out of gear. So it's not a very good system, I will tell you that. Perhaps I can make a stronger piston, but for sure I at least need no, I could possibly make a stronger piston, better piston for here, but for sure we need an air gauge here, because all it takes is a leak, small leak here, and you lose air pressure, and then shit starts to happen. That's why I don't really like these systems that depend entirely on air pressure. You know, I like the idea of having air pressure, but they should have done something where the air pressure just disengages and engages, but wherever it's at, there's like a stop so that it stays there. So let's say it's engaged and you lose your air pressure, instead of it going back to disengaged or the other way around, it stays there. So somewhat like in a transmission, like a car transmission. You can't put third gear if the car is in first gear, because there's a ball and a cylinder that moves from each side, so it's impossible for you to put both at the same time. And if we had an air shift in a car, for example, even if we lost air pressure, the transmission would still stay in that position. So I don't know if I make myself clear here or not, but this is definitely, the air systems is definitely a weak link in this truck. As you can see from the piston, this one's still in good shape, but it's not very strong. And it's lasted all this time, and it still works well, but it's definitely a weakness. And it's not that also, it's not just the cylinder, but if the governor on the air compressor isn't building enough air pressure, or you step on the brakes and the truck loses too much air pressure, like what was happening, then you not only lose air pressure from the brakes, maybe the wheels start to break, but you lose air pressure, and it causes all these problems on the transmission and on the differential on the PDL. So definitely, and the thing is, you'll have enough air pressure for the brakes, but not for this, because there's a regulator. So it's a very picky system where you have to have constantly the correct air pressure for this system to work properly. And the truck could be moving, because for the brakes, I think they only start braking after 60 psi. And this system here, if you're at 60 psi, then I think it might not even be working well at that pressure. It's already too low for it. So my point is, you could still be running the truck and possibly not even know about transmission and PDL problems. And I think I've said this before, but I did have a blowout of an air unit. So right there, as you can see, that's a new air brake unit. I know it's already bent because I drove the truck up on the rocks. But right on that coupling there, that fitting previously broke off on the old unit. So all my air escaped from there. And the thing is, if the truck is moving, this is a one-type air brake unit. So it only applies the brakes, but if you lose air pressure on it, it simply does nothing. Nothing happens to it. It doesn't engage the brakes like the front ones, or the two-piece units. These are the two-piece units. So if you lose air pressure on these, there's a giant spring in here and it engages the brakes, but not those ones. So what will happen is, you'll keep driving the truck, or the truck will still keep driving, and you have no air. You lose your air. Obviously that happens pretty fast, and as soon as you start losing air pressure on the entire system, then it'll break, but not before transmission PDL gets fried. So I definitely need to improve on the air system on this truck. But anyways, that's that. So at this point, I just got to install the remainder of these parts, and we'll be done.